The National Park Service logo.
Title: Yellowstone in Depth. Episode 9, Watershed Down.
A geyser erupts violently. Plumes of steam form and float away while huge columns of water burst out of the ground.
Mike Tursick, data analyst at Yellowstone National Park.
I first came here in 1982 with my family, and I remember getting out of the car and seeing Old Faithful and saying, I'm definitely coming back here someday.
Sequence of shots showing geysers erupting in slow motion. A couple of visitors walk by, watching the water spurt out of the ground.
Now I do a lot of data analysis and software design for the Park Service and the USGS.
Mike's sitting at his computer, writing code and studying a web page with graphs related to the Yellowstone climate. Then he's outside, drilling a screw into a tin contraption hung upside down from a tree trunk.
One big project is making climate data more accessible, because we're finally now to the point where we can start to make more confident statements about long-term patterns in time and in space about climate.
Panoramic view of a bare hill. Clouds drift overhead, casting shadows on the plains. Then a snow-capped mountain. Next, a sequence of shots. The Yellowstone National Park sign, followed by water dripping from the edge of several stalactites that have formed on the roof of a wooden lodge.
We know for sure that it's going to get warmer. For example, if you look at the northeast entrance to Yellowstone, there are roughly 80 to 100 days more per year above freezing than there were in the mid-60s.
Water trickling down over a jagged rock formation, then a river flowing through a snow-covered forest.
As a result, not only is the peak snow or the deepest snow recorded out there much lower than it ever was, there's fewer days per year with snow.
Slow motion shot of snow falling. Then tree branches weighed down by several inches of snow, followed by a series of shots showing winter landscapes. A forest completely covered in a thick blanket of snow, then riverbanks frozen over, and a vast white plain stretching as far as the eye can see.
This is bigger than anything we've ever faced.
Large plumes of fumarole steam rising up in the air.
Ann Rodman, Physical Sciences Branch Chief at Yellowstone National Park.
Our function as a place where snow and water is stored and then released into the streams, that's going to change going into the future. It's going to be released earlier, there'll be less of it. And the timing of that.
A montage of landscape shots. A river traversing a frozen plain with a white forested mountain looming in the distance. Then, video footage of the same spot in spring. The snow has melted away, revealing large parts of the riverbanks and the forest. Next, a view of the same plain during the summer. The ground is covered with greenery, and herds of animals graze under the sunlight. A fox skipping along, then a bee on a flower, and a panoramic view of green hills under a cloudy sky.
When the snow disappears, when green-up starts, triggers all kinds of things in ungulates and the predators that follow the ungulates, and plants growing, pollination, all kinds of phenological processes, and anything that changes that timing has a cascading effect, through the whole ecosystem.
A bear grazing in the rain, then a view of a forested area being covered in snow again. A sequence of snowscapes, a close-up of snow and frost fog drifting in the wind along a hillside, a frozen river, branches carrying large amounts of snow which progressively melts away. The scenery changes to that of verdant grasslands, insects perched on top of flowers, and clear skies reflected on the water surface of wetlands.
The part that we're really paying attention to is how fast that change is going to happen.
Since the end of the last ice age, temperatures increased by 5 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the location. But that took 5,000 years. In contrast, we predict about the same amount of warming to happen in 100 years.
And so what you'll see is things will die off, other things will come in, and you'll start to have combinations of vegetation that don't exist on the ground right now. Or you'll get a disturbance that'll come through, a fire, and what comes back will be different than what was there, because the conditions for seedlings to grow will be different than they were back when these trees were established.
A series of pictures showing bare blank tree trunks along a slope, then a forest of snags, with hundreds of tall thin tree trunks fallen on the ground, a close-up of a charred bark, then a panoramic view of the dead forest.
In the past, they estimate a fire on the scale of 1988 happened every 100 to 300 years. According to the models, by the year 2100, if there's no carbon emissions, the climate would be suitable for a fire of that scale every 3 to 5 years. It's going to be limited by how much forest there actually is left to burn.
Bird's eye view of a vast, heavily forested area.
We're talking about a park that's covered in forest right now, all around us, that might look profoundly different, might be more of a sagebrushy area by the end of the century. Things people really can't even imagine. I can't even imagine it. I'm just saying it because it's what the projections show, but I truly can't imagine it.
A duck dives into the water, creating ripples on the surface of a lake.
The potential is out there to affect everything you see when you come to Yellowstone.
Images of several species of flowers shown in quick succession, followed by mammals, birds, amphibians, and rodents. Then, photographs of people trudging through the snow and landscapes painted completely white. A series of hydrothermal features, geysers, steaming pools, fumaroles, and waterfalls. Next, rivers and plumes of steam reaching up to the sky. A torrential waterfall crashing down in slow motion, followed by a rainbow forming through the mist.
What we're seeing in Yellowstone mirrors what is seen throughout the entire greater Yellowstone ecosystem in the northern Rockies and many areas of North America. And we have to recognize that we're in a very different place than we were a decade ago.
Close-up shots capture water violently splashing upwards.
Dave Hollack, Chief of Yellowstone Center for Resources.
With a changing climate, we are faced with an incredibly difficult way of looking at the future of park management.
Endless fields of wheat, then a river flowing through an area with lush vegetation, trout swimming in shallow waters, and different types of mammals grazing.
For example, it's hard to know whether or not some of the things that we're doing with exotic plant management, with fish management and restoration, or in some of our work with our partners outside the park to secure migration corridors for wildlife, whether or not we're focusing on the right things if it turns out that that species will no longer be able to persist given the basic physical conditions in those systems.
The sun sets over Yellowstone National Park, painting the sky bright orange. Then it rises again over a snowy landscape.
When it comes to reduced snowpack, there are a lot of potential impacts.
Panoramic views of snow-covered areas in quick succession. Forests, flatlands, mountains, and riverbanks. Then a large blue lake with light reflected on its surface.
The Continental Divide goes right down through Yellowstone, so miles and miles downstream, people count on the water that's melting out of the greater Yellowstone area.
Several species of waterfowl floating on a wetland. A forested landscape in spring, then a cluster of small clouds clearly reflected on the calm surface of a river. Then a sequence of shots, including flat lands covered in mist, a man fishing in the wetlands, visitors walking along a boardwalk, a geyser erupting, and a child bending over the river smiling.
Talking about whether we have dug for a lodgepole is kind of an academic exercise. Talking about whether there's enough water for people downstream and what that means to how society is going to handle potential drought. That's a whole different thing, way beyond the borders of Yellowstone. And the more that this kind of thinking can get incorporated into decision making, so people are making decisions, thinking about likely futures, I think that's really important.
The child takes their father's hand, and they cross a wooden bridge together.
We're kind of at a turning point in history, so I think every person alive right now has the opportunity to make a big difference to what the future is like.
Read more at go.nps.gov/Yellowstone Climate. Yellowstone in Depth, Episode 9, Watershed Down, produced by Neil Herbert. Featuring Mike Tursick, Ann Rodman, and Dave Hollack. Made possible by a donation from Canon USA Incorporated through the Yellowstone Park Foundation.